The Black Book. This isn't written for sympathy. It's a statement, a declaration of who we are and who will never stop becoming. The Black Book is a record of rhythm, struggle, and strength. It carries the weight of history and the sound of tomorrow. Every page is proof that we've built more than they ever believed we could. And we're still building. Because this movement doesn't end. It evolves. We rise, fall, and move together. This is our language, our legacy, our voice. Welcome to the Black Book. We now begin with the introduction and forward. This is a product of H.I.M, Harmony in Motion, an extension of Super West Indian Entertainment, supplying wisdom and integrity. And we hope you enjoy the following presentation. Racism, black-on-black crime, police harassment, and lack of government support are normal within urban communities. Being born with African blood is a gift. Our ancestors are the first inhabitants of Earth. They were sophisticated and intelligent beings who built empires, pyramids, discovered religions, and cultivated cultures. Personally, I grew up Christian. My mom had me baptized Methodist. She is a strong believer in Yeshua. My grandmothers were also strong believers and regulars at church. In my life, I never needed to purchase a Bible, but was favored enough to be gifted multiple Bibles. Also, when I was with my grandmother, we would attend church. Anytime I went to see her, I would pack my formal clothes. It was also mandatory for my mother to pray and read a few verses from the Bible daily. I believe in Yeshua, who is more commonly referred to as Jesus today. His presence made an impact and effect on the world that is hard to ignore. Even our calendar year is based on the day of his crucifixion. We look at the world through the lens of his life. BC refers to before Christ was born, and AD refers to after Christ was born. How do we know who was here first and where they lived? To answer that, we look to the work of two scientists, Donald Johanson and Tom Gray. They discovered the skeleton of a woman who lived more than 3 million years ago. She walked upright, looked part human, part ape, hairier than us, but less hairier than a chimpanzee. They called her Lucy. For a long time, Lucy was believed to be the oldest human ancestor ever found. But science keeps moving. In time, new discoveries changed that story. They found Artie, a female skeleton about 4.4 million years old, and even Tumai, who lived nearly 7 million years ago. These ancient bones remind us that our story reaches farther back than we once imagined, and it all began in Africa, the cradle of civilization. Lucy may not be the first, but she remains a symbol of how far we've come and how deep our roots truly go. The evolution process began in Africa. Africans then migrated into different parts of Europe, Asia, and America. It was all one large landmass, making it possible to travel for those ambitious enough. This is the reason why African DNA is present in every race today. We are the first race to walk the earth, yet the ones who experience the most adversity. I decided to create something for the culture that is educational, empowering, and meaningful. There are a vast number of challenges placed in front of us, but we shall overcome. Our DNA is pure, strong, and diverse. Instead of being celebrated by our peers, we are often hated and scrutinized. Our ancestors were mythical beings who survived on natural resources. They were the first to build, hunt, write, draw, and communicate. The only race capable to withstand the ultraviolet rays of the sun. Africa, our home, is also home to exotic animals, diamonds, oil, gold, fruits, and vegetables. People from all over the world visit Africa, both with positive and negative intent. Many artifacts have been taken from Africa and placed in museums around the world, without consent. Chapter 1. Fear. Unfortunately, they fear us. Colored people are more likely to die to the hands of police than any other ethnic group. Most of the time, when a person of color dies because of a police officer, the officer is usually from a different race. Interestingly, I have never heard of an incident where an innocent Caucasian dies to the hands of a police officer. But if you were to ask me to name an innocent colored person that died by the hands of a police officer, I can easily name Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Eric Garner, Gabrielle Navarez, Alton Sterling, Freddie Gray, 12-year-old Tamir Rice, and the list goes on. But the question is, why do they fear us? The answer truly comes down to one word: stereotyping. It is human nature to see a person and to immediately categorize them in our mind. Unfortunately for us, colored people are considered dangerous, among other things. On numerous occasions, I would be walking toward a female, and I would notice that she would clutch her purse tighter the closer she got to me. I've never stolen a purse in my life, but in some minds, when they imagine a purse thief, it looks something like me. Stereotyping is what causes the fear of colored people. Rest in peace to Tamir Rice. He was 12 years old at the time of his passing. He was holding a toy gun when a police officer shot him. The fault is most likely of the dispatcher who received the 911 call. They told officers that a black male was pointing a gun at random strangers. But the person who called 911 also said that it's probably a fake gun and that it's a child. Both of these statements were not forwarded to the colleagues. Some would argue that colored people are more violent than other ethnic groups. However, what they fail to acknowledge is that the living circumstances are different within black communities. Factors like the drug trade contributes heavily to the violence. Whether because a person stole narcotics or a person tried to skip out on paying a supplier. Situations like these usually turn violent and, in most cases, deadly. If there were better opportunities for lower-class citizens, the drug trade would not seem like such a lucrative business opportunity. Poverty combined with a lack of education leads numerous individuals into a life of crime. They then acquire felonies that permit them from certain opportunities, further forcing them to continue their life of crime. Black people are the leading ethnic group in poverty. And instead of coming up with ways in which they can help the black community, the government does little to nothing to help black families, while being extremely quick to highlight whatever wrongdoings has been done in urban areas. Respect is also exceptionally important within black communities. If someone was known to have a weak personality, they will become easy prey to bullies. Therefore, disrespect is generally not tolerated. Disrespect is usually the reason between most fights and disputes. The words sorry and excuse me go a long way and can save a situation from going all bad. Domestic violence also plays a factor. Children who are abused by their parents tend to take out their anger on their peers and other people. The children that witness frequent fighting between their parents also tend to believe that fighting is normal. Chapter 2. Recognition. Honestly, recognition and the need to be seen or heard is a problem. It is also the reason why we spend so much money, the reason why rappers incriminate themselves, and the reason why people brag about their accomplishments or crimes. Many of our brothers and sisters were unfortunately born into poverty, a circumstance that creates a deep thirst and hunger for financial wealth and material possessions. Psychologist Ralph Smart once said, "Many people spend money that they don't have to impress people they don't like." Have you ever noticed the difference in races after they achieve wealth? What is it with us blacks and chains? We spent years wearing them against our will, received our freedom, and willfully bought more. I've never seen Bill Gates wear a gold chain or Steve Jobs in a Gucci belt. But when a person of color becomes a millionaire, you will know. They will make sure you know. The thirst for recognition is so real that rappers would intentionally incriminate themselves on records, as if they have forgotten that the police are regular people that listen to music as well. Bobby Shmurda, Boozy Badass, YW Melly, and Young Thug are all examples of rappers whose lyrics were used against them in court. But rappers aren't the only ones who like to celebrate their wrongdoings and accomplishments among their peers. Teenage boys and young adult males also partake in regular bragging of their dark endeavors, bragging about sexual encounters with peers just to be recognized as experienced with women. The glorification of material possessions is having a negative impact on our youth. Most kids don't understand economics, and when they see a Lamborghini in a music video, they become infatuated. Due to the lack of education in automobiles, they immediately place the supercar on their bucket list. However, They don't know that these luxury cars are designed to tie consumers into spending large amounts of money for service and repairs over the car's lifespan. Rapper Lupe Fiasco once had a Ferrari whose transmission had a problem. He took it to the dealer and was satisfied to hear that it was a minor issue. The mechanic told him that if it was another part of the engine, it could have costed up to $50,000. After repairing the supercar, he sold it the next day. Material possessions are actually a smoke screen, and most people don't even realize it. Would you rather someone fall in love with you for who you are or what you have? The answer should be simple, right? Luxury lifestyles creates jealousy and envy among peers, which causes robberies and sometimes even death. Rest in peace to Pop Smoke, who died in California after a home invasion went wrong. Rest in peace to PNB Rock, who died after sustaining gunshot wounds during an attempted robbery for his diamond chain. A lot of people say that rappers rap about negative things, but what they seem to forget is that they are regular people, who majority of the time come from negative environments. We all have egos, but some people conceal their egos better than others. Give a person a ton of money and it will not change them. It will only magnify who they really are. Sometimes I wonder, if these rappers weren't millionaires, could they have avoided dying during a robbery or drug overdose? Having a drug problem is one thing, but having a drug problem and a lot of money is another. Rest in peace to Mac Miller, Pimp C, co-founder of ASAP Mob, Yams, Fredo Santana, Juice WRLD, and everyone else who we lost over the years to a drug overdose or violence. Chapter 3. Education. It is important for us to educate ourselves on our laws, family history, a trait of any kind, black freedom fighters who came before us, and our culture. There is power in the knowing. The more you know, the more beneficial you become towards others and yourself as well. In the Bible, Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, it is stated that God said, "My people are destroyed due to a lack of knowledge." Firstly, by knowing the law, you can understand what your rights are and how to live accordingly. But it also gives you the opportunity to recognize when someone is abusing their power. People do not usually abuse their power intentionally. It is usually those who are uneducated, those who have been influenced by others, or those with ill intent. If you ever find yourself in a situation where someone is abusing their power, try to record the event. This can be by means of a voice recording, video, or even having a witness present. This way you can prove to a judge, lawyers, or other relevant individuals what. Secondly, learning a trade of any kind is very beneficial. By learning a trade, you can create the opportunity to render services and earn residual income, while being able to determine your price and workdays. Carpenters, plumbers, and barbers are a few examples of occupations that operate independently and don't require years of education to achieve, which allows them the opportunity to generate an additional stream of income legally. Thirdly, our family's history is also very important. In order to understand who we are, we must also understand our family. Are things such as diabetes, alcoholism, or cancer common in our family? These are important questions to ask, because by identifying your family's weaknesses, we can help prevent the spread of illnesses and bad habits. Lastly, knowing the history of the black freedom fighters that came before us. They fought hard for us to enjoy the freedom we have today. People like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Nelson Mandela were hated and became people of interest to local authorities. Not because they were violent, but because they were trying to unify and empower our people. Certain establishments fear us so much they create agendas to exploit, destroy, and depress us. As a black person, we cannot rely on the educational systems alone to give us the necessary education we need, because they never gave us information about where we come from or culture after they brought us to different parts of the world. They instead gave us new culture, religion, and names. It is obvious they were not concerned with preserving our traditions. It is up to us to find the truth of our lives. The FBI created a program called the Counterintelligence Program. This program was designed to disrupt, misdirect, and neutralize chosen organizations, commonly referred to as COINTELPRO. This special unit took an interest to African Americans who were nonviolent and active members in the liberation of African Americans. Malcolm X was a target of CONTLPRO. The Bureau documented in their files that they were trying to widen the rift between him and Elijah Muhammad. They achieved this by publishing news articles, instigating and pouring gasoline on the feud between the two Muslims. Malcolm X was, unfortunately, later assassinated by one of Elijah Muhammad's followers. A Caucasian called James Earl was convicted for the assassination of Mr. King, but always maintained his innocence. James says he was ordered by an unknown person over the telephone to place a gun and other items at a specific location at a specific time. He claims that he was framed for the assassination of Mr. King. And suspiciously enough, his lawyer was frequently caught changing his statements when asked about the case. Law enforcement did little to nothing to find the real killer of Mr. King, and James Earl died in prison an innocent man. Officers claimed that James shot Mr. King from a motel window, but witnesses on the scene and forensic specialists disagreed. King's entourage said the shot came from a sniper. The shooter shot one bullet and it hit Dr. King in the head, which clearly shows that it was done by a professional. Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize for his nonviolent protests. He was a Baptist preacher who owned a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology. Education was important for Dr. King. He was frequently invited to schools, specifically universities, to talk to students. Chapter 4. Segregation. We are in several ways a divided people. Divided geographically by ego, gangs, religion, culture, and language. Segregation makes it, unfortunately, easier for us to remain oppressed. We were stolen from Africa and brought to different parts of the world. We were given new names and transported to a foreign land. After the slave trade ended in 1865, we received no large payout, no information about our ancestors, where we came from, nothing. We overcame a negative situation and worked until we earned everything that we have today. Our motherland, Africa, has also changed immensely. Tectonic plates are shifting. Rivers are appearing and land has become scarred, searching for natural gems such as gasoline, diamonds, and gold. Europeans tried to claim the land for themselves in an act called colonization. The decolonization of Africa began in 1980, but has not happened entirely. South Africa still remains home to a large European population, and many countries in Africa are still under European control. Ego is another divider. Pride comes natural to us, and we don't generally believe that the grass is greener on the other side. African Americans consider themselves different from colored people from England. Caribbean natives consider themselves different from Africans. Countries in Africa consider themselves different from their neighbors. Culture and language also play a role. People usually view things that are different as strange. But it should not deter from the fact that we are all the same. We all possess melanin, experience the same stereotypes, and face common problems. Let's look at the science behind gangs. Neighborhood gangs are seen by law enforcement and others as small terrorist groups. However, they have never lived in an impoverished area. So, it is logical for them to not understand ghetto culture. Our first best friends usually stem from our neighborhood. After school, we usually play outside in the neighborhood. And when we are going out, there's a high chance that we might bring someone from the neighborhood. If a fight happens, who might help me? Most probably someone from the neighborhood. It's also common for neighborhood residents to rename their neighborhood. They distinguish themselves with specific handshakes and sometimes colors. Gangs were made to protect the neighborhood from things such as burglars and to weed out bullies, and to protect the neighborhood from aggressive assault. It is a fact that when two gangs are at odds, the chance of chaos is very high. The world is filled with a variety of people, all with different personalities. A gang of 50 members can be at odds with another gang of 50 members. And when one person takes it upon himself to commit a murder, that one decision creates a cycle that is irreversible for the other 49 members. It affects the gang who experienced the loss, because this was a person they knew, talked to, and most likely will want to avenge. But the opposing gang will also be affected. They will receive pressure from local authorities and paranoia from the probability of revenge. In the face of a crisis like a social injustice or police brutality, we stand together. However, if we can find a way to always stick together, we will be truly unstoppable. It starts with Black love. We are not enemies. We are the same. We are one. Chapter 5. Sufficiency. European scholars wrote books and novels, and in between the lines drew a picture of white supremacy. The Christian religion was under heavy scrutiny in the early 1930s for this exact reason. This scrutiny led to the birth of the Nation of Islam. The nation was commonly referred to as the religion for the black man in the time. It welcomed members such as Malcolm Little and Cassius Clay, who changed their names after joining. Too many of our sisters live by white beauty standards. It is common for colored women to put chemicals in their hair for softer hair. Other women would iron their hair to make it flat. There is nothing wrong with modifying the natural state of your hair. However, you should know that your hair is part of what distinguishes you from others. Why is it that it seems as if we are sometimes so afraid to embrace our nappy hair? What happened to the pride we took in wearing our afros? Some even refer to it as good hair when a person has soft hair these days, as if having hard hair is a sign of bad hair, which is false. Because our nappy hair knots naturally and creates locks with no chemicals needed. A healthy natural hairstyle that is low maintained and can be designed in many ways. It is not as if we don't have options. Our culture offers a wide variety of hairstyles such as locks, bantu knots, afros, braids, cornrows, twists, finger coils, curls, buns, puffs, and more. The reason they chose to enslave Africa was because of the immense strength we possess as a people. We are hard workers, but we are also a soulful people. Slavery was already present in Africa, but slaves were treated well and with respect. There were even laws made to protect slaves from ill treatment. Slaves was chosen as a form of punishment for captives of war. Europeans visited Africa, asked if they would have been able to purchase a few slaves, and our forefathers agreed. There were also many slaves that were kidnapped and some that were tricked. While working as slaves, our forefathers and mothers would sing as they did the labor. This slow, deep, emotional singing gave birth to what we call the blues today. Other than the blues, we are also responsible for the creation of Afro beats, amapiano, calypso, dancehall, gospel, hip-hop, jazz, reggae, rhythm and blues, soul, soca, and more. Soul food is a term that describes food so delicious that it feels as if it touches your soul. This style of cooking was created by blacks in the South of the United States. It was common and no secret that we were good with food. That's why European companies would put colored people, mainly women, on their packaging, because food coming from a black kitchen was considered a luxury. Dark complexions are sometimes made fun of by other people of color. An act which is a disgrace and needs to stop. How can we put an end to racism if we are also being racist to each other? It's a shame. How dare we hate on the amount of melanin that lays within someone else's skin? We live in a modern world. But if all electricity were to stop working, black families would still prevail, because we possess the necessary knowledge to sustain ourselves. Washing clothes by hand and cooking outside are things still being done today in 2022 by blacks who have electricity. We are more than enough. We are an abundance of strength, soul, and wisdom. The only humans whose melanin allows them to stay outside in the sun and not become burned. With a culture so beautiful, it created music genres, fashion trends, and foods popular today. Chapter 6. Exploitation. With the rise in soul food, business owners realized that delicious foods were quickly becoming synonymous with black culture. Frank Brown is known as the colored man, posing on the packaging of the famous Uncle Ben rice. Frank was paid $50 by the rice company to use his face, and he never received any additional payments. Uncle Ben's rice went on to become a success, and it became the best-selling rice from 1950 to 1990. The Quaker Company is currently also changing their Aunt Jemima syrup. The company acknowledges that the origins were based on a racist folklore. In a 2015 article in the New York Times, Professor Richardson stated that the name came from an old minstrel song, Old Aunt Jemima, where white actors would wear blackface and mock black people. The lady who posed as Aunt Jemima was Nancy Green, and she was a slave until the Civil War granted her freedom. She died on August 30th, 1923. She was unfortunately buried without a headstone. Sherry Williams took 15 years to find Nancy Green's resting place. After finding the resting place of Nancy Green, she requested permission and was approved by officials to place a headstone on the grave. Williams reached out to the Quaker Company and asked if they would donate and help them purchase a headstone. The Quaker Company declined and said that Nancy Green and Aunt Jemima weren't the same person. Aunt Jemima was a fictional character, they stated. But in 1890, she was hired by our T. Williams Company, who was looking for a mother figure for their new pancake mix. Nancy Green received a headstone on September 5, 2020, thanks to Ms. Williams. Colored people around the world drink Jack Daniel's whiskey with soda or pure with ice. But what is the origin of the whiskey, and who was the inventor? The person you have to thank for Jack Daniel's whiskey is Nathan Nearest Green. Green was a colored man born into slavery and freed after the Civil War. He taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. Jack Daniels then opened up a whiskey business and made Nathan the master distiller. Nathan eventually created his own line of whiskey called Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey. Miss Childress was a colored woman living in the southern part of the United States. She was famous for her fried chicken. Colonel Sanders used Miss Childress' recipe and started a fast food restaurant. After opening the fast food chain, he gave Miss Childress $1,200. This fast food restaurant is Kentucky Fried Chicken, one of the largest fast food chains today. Since 1933, immigrants are being received in the Dominican Republic from Haiti, mainly to work the sugarcane fields. The immigrants are usually housed in small villages close to the plantations, and these villages sometimes lack basic health facilities. In these villages, Haitians would be paid less than $2 an hour for a 12-hour workday. Because the Haitians are living on a working permit, their children are often denied citizenship, schooling, and public services. In West Africa, more than 1 million children are employed working on cocoa farms. They are working with sharp tools, dangerous chemicals, and carrying heavy loads. And unfortunately, as cocoa sales increase, so will child labor. Hopefully, the wages for cocoa will raise so that it can balance out the high risk. Chapter 7. The Enemy's Plan. The enemy has multiple plans. They plan to keep us uneducated, hide our history, maintain control of the media, increase their market shares, create an illusion that we are appreciated, keep us institutionalized, and promote self-destructive behavior, such as drinking, smoking, and violence. By keeping us uneducated about our history, they can focus on building and strengthening their supremacy. When showing picture of angels and heaven, people of color are not to be seen. The first color dolls were created in 1908, while the creations of dolls date back to 200 years BC. The world revolves around capitalism. Therefore, it shouldn't surprise anyone that increasing their market shares is a priority. The government has shares in various organizations. The better these organizations do, the more money they receive. Processed foods are becoming increasingly available everywhere and available for cheap prices. At my local supermarket, a pack of kiwi costs €4 while the price of 2 cheeseburgers is €1. Processed foods pose health risks like cancer and diabetes, but are unfortunately becoming increasingly popular and more affordable in urban communities. Black History Month is a tradition made to show appreciation to Black culture, Black legends, and Black people. The tradition is, however, only recognized by a handful of countries, namely Ireland, the Caribbean, the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and the Netherlands, while the rest observe in silence, refusing to give congratulations. What other race has such a prolific history? Who were the first species to walk the planet? Which ethnic groups' culture spread into various communities? One would assume that the respect would be global, but it is not the case. Let's talking about the penitentiary system, a lucrative industry, I might add. There is unfortunately money to be made in jails. Private prisons are paid $150 per day per prisoner according to Investopedia.com. However, it seems as if the money is shared vastly with the employees and not with the inmates. Food isn't luxurious. Sleeping amenities are low quality and ample. They call them correctional facilities, but these institutions don't correct anything. Majority of inmates usually return outside with trauma rather than tranquility. Misconduct and excessive force are regularly practiced on prisoners by prison guards. Some prisons have poor surveillances, and incidents that occur in the night are only uncovered in the morning. Cool, created by Brown and Williamson-sponsored Cool Jazz concerts in 1975. In 2004, Cool tried to sell their cigarettes by implementing hip-hop culture into their marketing. They called it the Cool Mix. Community activists and tobacco control advocates, including the National African American Tobacco Prevention Network, wrote to Brown and Williamson asking them to terminate the Cool Mix campaign because of the inappropriate marketing to youth and several violations of the Master Settlement Agreement. In June of 2004, the New York Supreme Court issued a restraining order prohibiting majority of the Cool campaign, leading to the recall of the Cool Mix cigarette packs entirely. Chapter 8, P.T.S.D. Not all wounds are visible. Some are carried quietly, in thoughts, in dreams, in silence. There are battles that end on the outside but continue within, replaying in the mind long after the noise fades. This is not weakness. It is a sign of what was survived. To those who carry invisible scars, your story still matters, your healing still counts, and your light has not gone out. You are seen. You are valued. You are not alone. Post-traumatic stress disorder, commonly referred to as PTSD, is an anxiety disorder that affects people who have been in extremely stressful situations. It is a feeling of intense sadness, anger, anxiety, or fear accompanied with flashbacks, which causes people to act estranged, detached, or panic. Soldiers and police officers experience PTSD the most. Upon being diagnosed with PTSD, soldiers and police officers would receive free therapy and counseling via healthcare, because it was understood and treated with immense care. However, there's another group of people on the battlefield that are too frequently forgotten. Another group of people exposed to extremely stressful situations, and those are the colored people in the race war. My heart goes out to my colored sisters who are lusted upon by men. She's filled with melanin and can withstand the rays of the sun. Women so close to nature that her body grows like a tree, plant, or flower. They admire her roots and the way her legs look in boots. However, majority of colored women fear going out alone at night and to unfamiliar places, due to experiences that they have had in their own lives. Instead of going to a therapist, our sisters deem that it is normal for attractive women. They may talk about it amongst friends, but it ends there. Women who are raped usually tend to keep a secret because they fear the repercussions or stigma associated with the situation. My heart goes out to my colored brothers who are residing in overpopulated low-income areas. A bucket filled with crabs where people pull and grab those above them for an opportunity to elevate. Robberies, theft, and breaking into homes are a norm. The feeling of unprotection creates the need to become overly cautious, some going the extent of preparing themselves for acts of war. My heart goes out to the young colored girls whose father wasn't around with a mother addicted to toxic men. Frequent arguments, molestation, deceit, lies, and stealing are things that may lead one to believe that all men are toxic, not realizing that it is a specific type that her mother was attracted to, and only a small percentage of the variety of men in the world. My heart goes out to the colored men with pure hearts. Fake friends act like vampires waiting for the perfect moment to drink from their veins. Those who think positively tend to believe that others do the same, blind to the fact that the world is a vast place filled with people that have different personalities, perspectives, and characteristics. Chapter 9. The secret hand, the hand that we don't see, is usually the hand that we don't expect. You won't expect a parent to deliberately put their child in danger for any apparent reason. You won't expect a teacher to teach a child false information in a classroom. But the world is a complex place. It is illegal for you to cause physical harm to another person, but it is legal for your country to go to war. With great power comes great responsibility, and those who are assigned to be in control are also human and therefore flawed. Most people enjoy the luxury of financial freedom, equating their happiness to the amount of money they have sitting in their bank account. The narcotics industry is lucrative due to the high demand for escape and coping mechanisms in life. Drugs are illegal in majority of the world, and a few places have begun to legalize cannabis. Some people, however, can't resist the money associated with narcotics. Even the ones who were supposed to be preventing the spread of narcotics join the market for financial reasons. One of the hotspots for crack cocaine was Los Angeles. Wherever there's a lot of narcotics, there's a lot of money involved. Gary Webb wrote in a news article that during the 1980s, a well-known law agency helped finance its hidden war against the Nicaraguan government with proceeds of drug sales. The cocaine flowing through the city of Los Angeles created a drug war, and gang members would sometimes purchase automatic weapons from government workers. News outlets contested the article, claiming that the article was based on false information. An American who was caught trying to deliver supplies to rebels claimed that his flights were directly supervised by members of a well-known agency. The man then named 2 officials and gave a detailed recollection of their operation. Several documents were taken from the plane, including Salvadoran Air Force identity cards. However, Salvadoran military officers and government officials said they weren't aware of these operations. Celerino Castillo reported to his fellow DEA members that cocaine was being held at the Air Force Base and was suspiciously fired shortly after. Former CIA agent Michael Hand was arrested at the age of 73 after being on the run. He created the Nugan-Hand Bank together with Frank Nugan, a bank that financed drug trafficking, money laundering, and international arms dealing. Mr. Hand disappeared in June 1980 following the collapse of the bank, which had debts of more than $50 million. Mr. Nugan committed suicide in his Mercedes-Benz. He was found by authorities with a rifle beside him. The coroner ruled it a suicide. When Mr. Hand was found, he was living under a fake name, Michael Fuller. Chapter 10. Conspiracy refers to the secret plan of someone or group to do something unlawful, harmful, or the action of plotting. Conspiracy theories challenge the status quo and encourage us to think outside of the box. Some theories are unproven while others are widely known and accepted. Let's investigate some popular conspiracies. Why did Michael Jackson die? Drug overdose? Who gave him drugs? His personal doctor? Why would his personal doctor try to poison him? This situation seems not so likely to happen. Because doctors earn money from their patients, one dead patient means one less customer. However, what if someone else wanted the singer to have an early demise? Someone with authority. His personal doctor is now serving a jail sentence because of the murder, but is he the real suspect, or is he just a pawn on a bigger chessboard? There is poverty throughout the entire world, but if we listen to the media, there are certain areas that have more famine than others. The media portrays Africa as a continent that is drowning in poverty, encouraging people to donate financially to help Africa fight against poverty. But is this money going toward African families, or is the money going to a corporation? Gentrification is the act of increasing accommodation costs in a specific neighborhood to change its character. Its goal is usually to lessen crime and traffic while increasing capitalism. However, the people forced to leave the area aren't given an ultimatum and usually end up displaced. The largest housing project in America was the Cabrini Green Projects in Chicago before it was demolished. The projects received negative media attention due to its unlivable conditions and horrific acts of violence. In 1992, Dantrell Davis was shot by a stray bullet while walking with his mother. He died at the age of 7. The demolition of the projects displaced drug dealers, gangsters, and single mothers in Chicago, causing crime, violence, and mayhem to spread to different corners of the city as former Cabrini Green residents search for new accommodation. As the crime rose in different parts of the city, gentrification rose as well. Gentrification is not a cure for crime. It only forces residents to move, displaces families, and bring in money for real estate agencies and banks. Chapter 11. Pharmaceutical companies. God has given us two legs because one leg would be less successful in its endeavors. He also gave us two eyes because two eyes see more than one. Likewise for animals who are prey, such as chicken and gazelle, have eyes on both sides of the head to see around them. Hunting animals have eyes placed on the front of their heads to see how far away the prey is. Our God is not a God who gives us things we don't need. Many minerals, vitamins, and medicines can be found in nature. There are many doctors who offer plant-based medicines and herbal treatments, but they are hardly discussed. Vitamin supplements are supposed to boost your immune system, but majority of them can be taken on an empty stomach. Painkillers are the same. They also are recommended to be consumed during or after a meal. They both come with rules for consumption to ensure safe use. Fruits also provide vitamins, antioxidants, and can be consumed as desired. The same goes for vegetables. Plant-based medicines and doctors are a threat to pharmaceutical companies. They undermine their teachings and stunt their profits. Rest in peace to Dr. Sebi, a herbal doctor who was arrested after being accused of money laundering. They held the 82-year-old in custody for weeks until he caught pneumonia and later died of his complications. The Supreme Court saw 2,781 cases where people challenged his doctor title and teachings. But Sebi always came out victorious. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was illegal to post anything online about COVID, while vaccines were being created by various companies across the world. According to ReliefWeb, Moderna, Pfizer, and BioNTech made roughly $34 billion in profit before taxes in 2021. It seems as if vaccines were becoming a lucrative business. But for everything to go as planned, for the vaccine companies and those with shares in them, they needed the public to fear. Therefore, for a period, COVID was more discussed than cancer, AIDS, and pneumonia. Chapter 12. The fight for liberty. The fight for our independence will not be an easy one. Our land in Africa is rich and filled with natural resources. The Caribbean has natural attractions such as beaches, rivers, and volcanoes that attract tourists from all over the world. These entities are aware of the benefits we possess and therefore want to keep us under their control via colonization. For the revolution to take place, we must first separate ourselves from the European entities that colonized us. Politically, financially, and spiritually, they have groomed us. It is easier said than done. Our politicians enjoy the support they receive every blue moon from their European friends. Even though they have different views, the lust for money keeps them tied together in a love-hate relationship. Being able to ask and receive money is a primary concern. As long as money is coming in, many are proud to be puppets for Europe. Our race is selfless. We support everyone, even those who despise us. We wear Italian clothes, American shoes, eat Chinese food, and drive German cars. Even those living in impoverished areas have designer clothes, jewelry, and sport cars. Giving our financial resources to other countries that don't care or share with us. We are all aware of the efforts made to keep us out of history. Africa has had many religions. These religions were never thoroughly documented or researched by Western media. Religion was above the law in the past. Many have died due to differences in religious views. Our European friends are rich enough to build airplanes, cars, and spaceships, but refuse to help our family and places they colonized in Africa. Some Western companies make Feed the Children in Africa campaigns, basically asking money from the poor to feed the poor, as if money acquired by tax couldn't contribute to improve the infrastructure, communities, and towns of colonized countries. If they truly cared, we would have seen more improvements in Africa and the Caribbean. However, we cannot wait for them. We need to be the ones to invest in our land, people, and culture. Who better to take care of a land than the people who grew up there, the people whose ancestors grew up there? people whose history is tied to the land. If we don't move fast, we will create the opportunity to lose our land to foreigners. Chapter 13. Ownership. The goal is ownership. By owning the websites, businesses, and media platforms, we will be creating an ecosystem for us where we can't be silenced. There are numerous colored individuals and organizations that left a legacy to be remembered. We commend you and the effort you've put forward for the emancipation of our people. Thank you, Tyler Perry, for creating the Tyler Perry Studios. 330 acres, which is bigger than a lot of film studios. Thank you to Vincent Leifert, who created the Christian Movement for Life in Philadelphia. They held numerous protests against animal cruelty. Thank you to the Black Panther Party and their free breakfast programs for the youth. Thank you to Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which fostered restaurants and shopping centers to encourage Black economic independence. Thank you to Oprah Winfrey for creating the Oprah Winfrey Show, where she shares prizes and valuable information. Many people are going back to Africa, purchasing land, businesses, and building homes. Honestly, I encourage my friends and family to do the same. The prices are low, and some areas accept rent annually, making it plausible to start a business on the continent. Musically, we are not in the era of music labels. The birth of the internet gave us the tools to engineer our own success. A record label can drop you whenever. Not to mention, they are paid a percentage of the artist's revenue. Some labels even go as far as dictating the content, message, and style of the project. In terms of food, I encourage those who have the room to plant to do so. Plant vegetables, lemongrass, herbs if possible. That way, you know your food is 100% biological because you saw its evolution. Not everything labeled biological is 100% biological. Especially in hair products, many greases damage the hair because of pomade and perfume. Use pure biological oils, and you will notice a difference. If there isn't a store in town that sells the oil you're looking for, research how to make the oil yourself. Chapter 14. A place to call home. To my brothers and sisters experiencing racism in different parts of the world, we love you. Our ancestors and angels stand by you. You are never alone. In fact, you are surrounded by angels and ancestors. The Caribbean and Africa will always provide you with a place to call home, a place where you will not be judged by the color of your skin. Our home should feel cozy and should not be accompanied by frequent weird stares or looks. It is also very important to not forget our parents. The same way they did for us, it is only right that we do for them, taking care of them as they rise in age. There are few places that can touch the soul the way a trip back home does. The memories and familiar places remind us of the true simplicity of life. And in the home, we make the first examples to our offspring, so be mindful. The habits and rituals parents do are prone to be copied by their youth. As men, we should not cheat or lust after other women. It is important that we show our sons the proper way to love a woman. If the son witnesses his father committing adultery, he may fall victim to the same circumstances in the future, thinking that it's normal. Women should honor and show interest in her partner, because her daughter is watching and needs the right example from at home. Our children are not made by us. They're made by God. However, they do come through us. Some parents make the mistake and plan the child's life without confronting the child. Acting in this manner is not empowering. We should take the time to get to know our child, because God gives every child a unique gift, and it is our goals as a parent to uncover what their gifts are. Love is the highest frequency. No feeling can compare to finding and being loved. Unfortunately, absent fathers are frequent in colored families. The absence of fathers isn't a simple problem, but a complex one. Men and women are wired differently. It's almost as if we came from two separate planets and met here to create a new one. Together, we create balance in the household. One that is strong accompanied by one that is nurturing, a protector and a caregiver. Having a successful relationship is challenging. Just as any union, it will face hardships, disagreements, and fights. Friendships end, contracts are terminated, and relationships are not excluded. Which lead me to ask, what is love? Some people believe that love is the butterfly feeling in the stomach. I believe love was best described in the Bible in Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5. Love is patient, love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Throughout history, there have been voices that shaped the sound of freedom, hands that built the foundations of our culture, and minds that reimagined what was possible. These are the legends, the architects of our rhythm, the defenders of our dignity, and the dreamers who turned pain into progress. Though their time on this earth has passed, their spirit continues to move through us in our art, our voices, our victories, and our everyday resilience. This chapter is dedicated to those who paved the way. Their names are not lost to time. They are written in rhythm, in memory, and in motion. May we honor their legacy not only in remembrance, but in continuation. In the dead silence of night, when freedom was only a whisper, a figure moved silently through the darkness. They said no chains could hold her. No fear could stop her. Guided by faith and by the stars, she walked paths no map had ever drawn, leading the lost toward a dawn they had never seen. To some, she was a ghost. To others, a savior. But history remembers her by one name. Her name, Harriet Tubman. The shadow that moved through the night. The light that guided the lost. The one they called Moses. Born into slavery in March 1822 and later rest on March 10, 1913, she entered a world that sought to chain her body but could never capture her spirit. As a child, she was beaten and whipped by many masters, until one day, an angry overseer threw a metal weight meant for another and struck her instead. The injury left her with deep pain and a lifetime of visions, dreams she believed were messages from God. Guided by faith and fortified by endurance, she grew into a woman whose courage would one day rewrite history. In 1849, she escaped slavery and reached Philadelphia, tasting freedom for the first time. But freedom, to her, meant little if her family and people remained enslaved. So she went back, again and again, moving silently through the woods under cover of night. Following the North Star and trusting the voice within, she led the enslaved to liberty, one mission at a time, one soul at a time. Not once did she lose a life under her guidance. Her people called her Moses, for she delivered her nation from bondage with nothing but faith as her weapon. When the Fugitive Slave Act was passed, declaring that escaped slaves must be returned to their masters and that any who helped them were criminals, she refused to yield. She led her people farther north, across the border into Canada, beyond the reach of slave hunters and unjust laws. In 1859, she recruited supporters for John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, and during the Civil War, she became the first woman in U.S. history to lead an armed military expedition, liberating over 700 enslaved people at Combahee Ferry. Her footsteps carried faith. Her name carried freedom. She was born a slave, but she lived and died a savior. Another born slave who died with respect. I have another story we can't neglect. Born in bondage, he rose from the dust of slavery with a hunger no chains could contain, the hunger for knowledge. Where others saw walls, he built doors. He taught that liberation could live in the mind long before it lived in the law. His classrooms became battlefields, his lessons the blueprint for generations yet to come. From the fields to the faculty, he climbed, not to escape his people, but to lift them. His name, Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was born a child of slavery, more specifically the last generation slaves. Booker saw both sides of the fence. He was both a free man and a slave. Fortunate to witness freedom after the Civil War granted emancipation for all slaves. He moved to West Virginia with his family after being freed. In 1881, he became the leader of the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, now known as the Tuskegee University. He helped beautify the establishment with the help of a few helping students willing to do construction. As lynchings in the South reached a peak in 1985, Washington gave a speech known as the Atlanta Compromise, which brought him national fame. In addition to his contribution to education, he has written 14 books, helped blacks in the field of education, which led to more blacks being able to support the civil rights movement. Let me take you to the Caribbean. From the classrooms of change rose a man of vision, not bound by borders, nor silenced by doubt. He saw a people scattered, yet destined to rise as one. His words were ships, his dreams, oceans. He spoke not just of freedom, but of return to a home carried within the bloodline, to a power remembered in the bones. While others marched for justice, he sailed for destiny. His voice thundered across continents, calling the lost, the broken, and the brilliant to see themselves not as subjects, but as kings, queens, and builders of nations. They called him a dreamer, but time revealed him as a messenger. His name, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr. was born on the 17th of August, 1887, and laid to rest on June 10, 1940. His birth was in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica. As a teenager, he held a job in the print field. While working in Kingston, he joined labor unions. Garvey lived in Costa Rica, Panama, and England. After he returned to Jamaica, he made the Universal Negro Improvement Association in 1914. He moved to the United States and established a UNIA branch in New York City's Harlem district. Emphasis was placed on unity between Africans and African descendants. Garvey also campaigned for an end to European colonial rule across Africa and advocated the political unification of the continent. His dream was to unify Africa as a one-party state governed by himself. He believed that black people had to be financially independent from Caucasians and their countries. Garvey created the Negro Factories Corporation and Negro World newspaper. In 1919, he became president of the Black Star Line Shipping and Passenger Company, designed to make a link between North America and Africa to further facilitate African-American migration to Liberia. Let's keep the tone extraordinary and speak of another revolutionary. Before Garvey dreamed of ships, before nations found their names, there was a man who turned rebellion into revelation. Freedom has always had guardians, those who move through time, carrying the same fire in different forms. When the underground's whispers faded, a new voice rose, bold, unshaken, unafraid. His name, Fred Hampton, the revolutionary who taught that love for the people is the highest form of power. At just 10 years old, he hosted breakfast programs for children, proving that leadership begins with service. He organized protests, taught political classes at dawn, and launched programs for food, housing, and police accountability. They feared him not for violence, but for unity too strong to divide. On December 4th, 1969, police raided his home and took his life as he slept beside his pregnant partner. He was 21 years old, yet his dream lived on through his son, Fred Hampton Jr., and every voice that still dares to speak truth to power. Fred Hampton's love was his revolution, and that love refuses to die. Think we're done? Sadly not. On the contrary. Let's talk about another revolutionary. Born enslaved, yet carrying the bearing of a general, he rose from the cane fields of Haiti to command the winds of history itself. They called him the Black Napoleon, but he was more than that. He embodied a truth the world feared to face, that freedom, once awakened, cannot be chained again. His name, Toussaint L'Ouverture, born on May 20th, 1743, and laid to rest on April 7th, 1803. L'Ouverture was born enslaved in Haiti and freed himself before the revolution. Skilled, disciplined, and strategic, he worked as a planter, miller, coachman, and even managed estates before joining the uprising at nearly 50 years old. As a lieutenant and later commander, he unified Haiti, restored plantations with paid labor, and built one of the strongest armies in the Caribbean. Though he died before the final, violent stage of the revolution, his groundwork made victory possible. His lieutenant, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, carried his mission forward, declaring Haiti's independence and the emancipation of all enslaved people on January 1st, 1804. Toussaint L'Ouverture died, but his revolution did not. It lived and conquered. In America, when the storms of oppression raged and faith seemed to flicker in the dark, a voice rose, calm, steady, certain. He spoke not to the crowd, but to the consciousness of a people. He built not merely temples, but a foundation of thought, discipline, order, identity. In an age when many bowed to the image of their captors, he taught self-knowledge as salvation, to eat with dignity, to dress with pride, to see divinity reflected in black skin. His mission was not to please the world, but to awaken his own. From his teachings, movements rose. From his guidance, giants were formed. His name, Elijah Muhammad. His name, Elijah Muhammad, the architect of awakening, the man who turned faith into formation and made belief a weapon of liberation. Elijah Muhammad came into this world on October 7th, 1897, and was laid to rest on February 25th, 1975. His formal education ended in the 4th grade, but his real lessons began in the fields and factories of the South. He worked in sawmills, brickyards, and as a sharecropper, doing what he could to help his family survive. His economic program gave the nation roots as well as wings. By the 1970s, the Nation of Islam owned bakeries, barbershops, coffee shops, grocery stores, laundromats, nightclubs, a printing plant, retail stores, real estate holdings, a fleet of tractors, and vast farmland. Elijah Muhammad built not only a nation in name, but a nation in action. His vision fed, employed, and educated thousands, proving that belief, when organized, becomes power. And then came the dreamer, not asleep, but wide awake in faith. He stood at the crossroads of hatred and hope, his weapon not rage, but reason wrapped in love. His voice moved mountains, not because it was loud, but because it was true. He spoke of justice as if it were already written, and of peace as if it were already possible. Where others called for war, he called for conscience. And though they silenced his body, they could not silence his sound. His words still ring through streets and souls, a reminder that dreams are not fantasies. They are blueprints for freedom. His name, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name. Martin Luther King Jr. born on January 15, 1929, and laid to rest on April 4, 1968. Son of Martin Luther King Sr., he inherited both a name and a purpose rooted in faith and action. Dr. King led marches for voting rights, labor rights, desegregation, and justice for all who were denied equality. He rose to prominence during the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott and later became president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. In 1963, he stood before the world on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and declared his immortal dream, a vision of unity, justice, and freedom. His leadership helped achieve monumental change: the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. For his unwavering faith in nonviolence, he received the Nobel Peace Prize in October 1964. In his final years, his mission grew larger to confront poverty, materialism, and the war in Vietnam. In 1968, he began organizing the Poor People's Campaign, calling for economic justice for all races. But before the dream could expand, his voice was silenced by an assassin's bullet. His death sparked mourning and movement across a grieving nation. Though the man fell, his message did not. Dr. King taught the world that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of love in the face of it. The city of discussion is Chicago. In a new era, where battles are fought not with bullets, but with cameras and conviction, another warrior rose. He didn't march through streets of segregation. He walked through neighborhoods silenced by fear. Armed with a lens, he turned the streets of Chicago into a broadcast of truth. He filmed what others refused to see, spoke what others feared to say, and gave the voiceless a stage no network could silence. His mission was simple: show reality as it is, and remind his people who they are. They tried to erase him, but his message lives on in every clip, every post, every young soul that dares to document truth. Zack Stoner was born on March 25, 1990, and laid to rest on May 30th, 2018. The founder of the legendary Zack TV1 YouTube channel, he began his journey in 2009, filming simple vlogs and everyday life in Chicago. But what started as a hobby evolved into a mission to document the voices, struggles, and stories that mainstream media ignored. Zack TV became a platform for the people, raw, uncut, and unfiltered. He gave rising artists a voice, filmed neighborhood documentaries, and captured the soul of Chicago in all its brilliance and brutality. His interviews gave light to a generation of rappers, dreamers, and storytellers who otherwise would have remained unseen. Yet tragedy followed the truth he told. Many of the artists he interviewed would later lose their lives to gun violence. On the night of May 30th, 2018, Zack attended a show in Chicago to support local artist AMG Fresh. When he sensed danger, he tried to warn Fresh, urging him to leave before it was too late. But celebration and chaos collided that night, and Zack, always loyal, stayed until the end. As he waited outside, he was caught in the crossfire and became another name written in the tragedy he worked so hard to expose. Though his voice was silenced, his vision remains eternal, a reminder that truth-tellers walk dangerous roads, but their stories never die. Next, we traveled to West Africa. From the heart of Nigeria came a sound, raw, relentless, divine. It wasn't just music. It was medicine. It was war. He played like thunder, danced like flame, and spoke truths governments fear to hear. His horn carried rebellion. His stage became a sanctuary, his songs, sermons for the soul. They tried to silence him, but how do you silence rhythm? How do you cage a spirit born free? He called his movement Afrobeat, but it was more than sound. It was strategy. It was survival. His music moved nations. His courage moved generations. His name, Fela Aníkúlápó Kuti, known to the world as Fela Kuti or Abamiyita, was born on October 15, 1938, and laid to rest on August 2, 1997. He was born into a powerful family of intellect and resistance. His mother, Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, was a fearless women's rights activist, and his father, Israel Oludeton Ransome Kuti, was a minister, school principal, and the first president of the Nigeria Union of Teachers. Two of his brothers became medical doctors, and his cousin, Wole Soyinka, would go on to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. In 1958, Fela was sent to London to study medicine, but destiny had other plans. He chose music instead. The trumpet became his voice, and in school he formed Kolo Lobitos, a band that blended jazz and highlife into something new, raw, and electric. Returning to Nigeria in 1963, he reformed the band and trained as a radio producer for the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation. In 1967, while in Ghana, he named his sound Afrobeat, a revolutionary fusion of highlife, funk, jazz, salsa, calypso, and traditional Yoruba rhythms. In 1969, during his time in America, he met Sandra Smith, an activist who introduced him to the Black Panther Party and its message of black empowerment and resistance. When he returned to Nigeria in 1970, his music transformed. The love songs faded, replaced by messages of freedom, corruption, and truth. He built the Kalakuta Republic, a commune, studio, and sanctuary he declared independent for Nigeria, a living protest in rhythm and spirit. Fela lived boldly and loved freely, taking 27 wives in a single ceremony, and using his life as a symbol of freedom without apology. In 1979, he founded the political movement MOP, Movement of the People, declaring his mission to clean up society like a mop. His horns shouted against tyranny. His drums called nations to consciousness. Fela Kuti was more than a musician. He was a revolution with rhythm. Next we go back to the United States where, from the ashes of struggle and the glow of the West Coast sun, came a voice that carried both fury and faith. He wasn't just a rapper. He was a writer, a prophet, a pulse. Every lyric was a confession. Every verse, a revolution disguised as rhythm. He spoke for the lost sons, the single mothers, the broken dreamers still daring to hope. His pain became our poetry. His truth, our soundtrack. They try to define him by controversy, but history defines him by courage. He lived fast, but his message moved slow, still echoing through corners, classrooms, and consciousness. His name, Tupac Shakur, the rose that grew from concrete, the heart of a generation that refused to die quietly, the voice that proved, even in chaos, the spirit can still make music. Tupac Shakur, known to the world as Tupac or Machiavelli, was born on June 16, 1971, and laid to rest on September 13, 1996. He was born in New York City to parents who were both members of the Black Panther Party, warriors, and political activists dedicated to liberation. A month before his birth, his mother, Afeni Shakur, stood trial in New York as part of the Panther 21 case. Facing more than 150 charges, and miraculously, she was acquitted. His stepfather, Mutulu Shakur, spent 4 years on the FBI's most wanted list, and his godfather, Elmer Geronimo Pratt, a high-ranking Panther, was falsely convicted of murder and imprisoned for 27 years before being proven innocent. From birth, Tupac was surrounded by revolutionaries, taught that resistance was not rebellion, but responsibility. He was named after Tupac Amaru II, descendant of the last Incan ruler, who led a historic uprising against colonial rule. His mother once explained, "I wanted him to have the name of a revolutionary, an indigenous person in the world. I wanted him to know he was part of a world culture, not just from a neighborhood." That spirit of defiance followed him everywhere. On October 31, 1993, Shakur was arrested in Atlanta after shooting 2 off-duty police officers, brothers Mark and Scott Whitwell, who were harassing a black motorist and using racial slurs. Witnesses confirmed Shakur had fired in self-defense after being shot at first. The Whitwells were later charged for firing at Shakur's car and lying to investigators. It wasn't the first time he confronted the system. In October 1991, just a month before releasing his debut album Tupacalypse Now, 2 Oakland police officers stopped him for jaywalking. When he gave his name, a name they said didn't sound American, they slammed him to the ground, scraping his face against the concrete. Tupac took them to court and won. His 25 years of life burned bright with creativity and contradiction. He was a poet, an actor, an activist, a prophet in rhyme. He won multiple music awards, starred in unforgettable films, and created verses that still move generations today. Though his body fell, his message lives, teaching that truth, once spoken, never dies. Let me use this time to tell you about the revolutionary whose life did a 360 after release from prison. A promise he made and kept himself. Out of the silence of oppression came a voice like thunder, a man once bound by the world's lies, who broke his own chains first before breaking the world's illusions. He spoke not to comfort, but to confront. Every word, a mirror held to a nation's soul. He taught that freedom without knowledge is fragile, and unity without purpose is hollow. His truth made the fearful tremble and the faithful awaken. They called him dangerous, but only because he dared to speak what the powerful refused to hear. He rose from darkness to discipline, from anger to awakening, from name to nation. His name, Malik el-Shabazz. Born on May 19, 1925, and laid to rest on February 21, 1965. Before the speeches and the spotlight, before the world knew his name, there was a man searching for meaning inside a cell. While imprisoned, several of his siblings began writing to him about a new movement, the Nation of Islam, which preached black self-reliance, discipline, and the spiritual return of African descendants to a place of pride and purpose. In 1948, his brother Reginald wrote to him, saying, "Malcolm, don't eat any more pork and don't smoke any more cigarettes. I'll show you how to get out of prison." That message marked the turning point. Malcolm quit smoking, refused pork, and began a steady correspondence with Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam. From that exchange of letters, a new man was born, Malcolm X, the X representing the stolen identity of his African ancestors. Upon his release, he became one of the movement's most dynamic leaders, electrifying crowds with his voice, vision, and intellect. Yet his journey was far from over. In April 1964, with the help of his half-sister Ella, Malcolm flew to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, beginning his Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage to Mecca. Welcomed as a state guest by Prince Faisal, he performed the rites of Hajj and witnessed something that changed him forever. Surrounded by Muslims of every complexion, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, all standing as equals, he saw, for the first time, a vision of humanity unscarred by race. He returned to the world as Malik el-Shabazz, no longer bound by bitterness, but reborn in truth. His message evolved from separation to solidarity, from vengeance to vision. He became a global voice, a man sought after by nations, universities, and movements across the world. His words cut through illusion, his courage confronted injustice, and his legacy continues to rise wherever truth refuses to kneel. Let me take you back to the West Indies, from where came a singer, a prophet with a guitar, a freedom fighter wrapped in melody. His weapon was rhythm, his army was love, his mission, redemption. He sang of Babylon and Zion, of struggle and salvation, of a world where hearts beat louder than hate. Through smoke and sound, he reminded the weary that peace is not weakness, it is wisdom. His dreadlocks carried the weight of faith. His voice carried the weight of generations. They tried to confine him to music, but his message outgrew every stage. His words became scripture for the soul, and his rhythm, a revolution that never ends. His name, Robert Nesta Marley, later known as Burhane Selassie. He was born on February 6, 1945, and laid to rest on May 11, 1981. Considered one of the pioneers of reggae, his musical career fused elements of reggae, ska, and rocksteady, along with his own distinct voice and message, a fusion that changed the sound of the world. Marley's contributions to music amplified Jamaican culture on a global stage and made him a universal symbol of peace, freedom, and spiritual unity. Some men leave songs behind. Others leave revolutions. But few, very few, leave both. His words crossed oceans. His melodies broke chains. And his message became a movement that still breathes today. Long after the final concert faded, the world continued to echo his truth, that music can free more souls than war ever could. His legacy was too vast for one lifetime, too powerful for one nation. And so the world bowed, not to the man alone, but to the meaning behind his music. What follows are not merely awards, but acknowledgments of a spirit that refused to be silenced, awards and honors. 1976, Rolling Stone Band of the Year. March 1994, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. 1999, Album of the Century by Time magazine. 2004, received one of the first stars in the UK Music Hall of Fame. 2010, Catch a Fire inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. 2022, honored in the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame. His music still moves the humble and the mighty alike. His voice remains the anthem of the oppressed and the prayer of the hopeful. Bob Marley didn't just sing reggae, he became it. Let's go back to Africa for a second. From the soil of South Africa, where freedom was once a whisper, rose a voice that sang what others fear to say. He carried reggae not as imitation, but as revelation, the sound of Africa speaking back to itself. Through the smoke of apartheid, his songs became sermons of healing. He sang of unity, of love stronger than oppression, of hope louder than hatred. His melodies crossed borders, his message crossed generations. He stood tall in the face of division, reminding the world that music is not escape, it is endurance. They took his life, but they could not take his echo. His name is Lucky Dube. Lucky Philip Dube was his name. Lucky Dube, the African voice of liberation. The messenger who proved that truth sung in rhythm will outlive the silence of violence. Lucky Dube was born on August 3, 1964, and laid to rest on October 18, 2007. His parents separated before his birth, and he was raised by his mother, the woman who named him Lucky because she saw his arrival as a miracle after several heartbreaking losses. As a boy, he worked as a gardener, helping his family survive through hardship. But even then, something inside him reached for more. Realizing that labor alone could not feed the soul, he returned to school, where he joined a choir and formed his first band, the Skyway Band. In those humble beginnings, the sound of revolution began to stir. During live performances, Lucky noticed that his audiences reacted most strongly to the reggae songs he performed. Inspired by Jimmy Cliff and Peter Tosh, he began shaping his voice not just to entertain, but to enlighten. He recognized that the messages within Jamaican reggae of freedom, equality, and unity carried the same heartbeat as the South African struggle. Under apartheid's shadow, his music became a light. His songs spoke of injustice, hope, and healing, connecting with people across language and color. Beyond the microphone, he also appeared in films, continuing to share his spirit through art and story. Considered one of the most important figures in the history of African reggae and dub, Lucky Dube transformed pain into poetry and oppression into anthem. His voice remains an unbroken song, still teaching, still comforting, still freeing. Back to America during the slavery days. Before microphones, before cameras, there was a man whose words shook the world by candlelight. Born in bondage, he stole his freedom not by sword, but by sentence. He read what he was never meant to read. He spoke what they swore he'd never say. Every word became a weapon. Every speech, a storm. He turned language into liberation and proved that once the mind is free, no chain can hold the body. He faced presidents and mobs alike with the same unshakable fire, not to beg for equality, but to demand it. His pen rewrote the image of the black man, not as property, but as prophecy. His name, Frederick Douglass, the orator, the abolitionist, the man who turned knowledge into revolution and made truth itself his rebellion. Born Washington Bailey in February 1818 on the eastern shore of Maryland, he entered this world enslaved, but destined to rise above it. His first attempt to escape from a man named Freeland, who had hired him from his owner, failed. But failure could not contain him. In 1837, he met Anna Murray, a free black woman from Baltimore, 5 years his senior. Her freedom ignited his own belief in possibility. She encouraged him, supported him, and funded his dream of liberty. On September 3, 1838, he made that dream real, boarding a northbound train on the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad, and escaping to freedom. By 1847, Douglass was no longer a fugitive, but a force. He founded his first abolitionist newspaper, the North Star, from which his words traveled farther than chains could ever reach. In 1848, he became the only black delegate at the Seneca Falls Convention, the first gathering for women's rights, proving his fight for freedom knew no gender, no boundary, no limit. Douglass also understood the power of image. He believed that the camera would not lie, that truth could be captured, not just spoken. He never smiled. He faced every portrait as he faced injustice, head-on, unflinching, commanding the viewer to see not a slave, but a man. His journey ended on February 20th, 1895, in Washington, D.C., but his echo has never faded. His life was a lens, focused, fearless, and forever aimed at freedom. And then came a man whose silence spoke louder than any shout. From the dust of South Africa's struggle, he rose, not as a symbol, but as a servant of justice. He was born into a land divided by color, ruled by fear, and bound by laws designed to break the spirit. But his spirit could not be broken. They took his freedom, but could not imprison his purpose. They locked away his body, but not his belief that equality would one day breathe through the nation's lungs. For 27 years, he waited, not in defeat, but in discipline. And when the gates finally opened, he did not return in vengeance, but in victory. There are men who fight for freedom, and there are men who become freedom. Out of the shadows of oppression, from the heart of a divided land, rose a man whose very name would come to mean forgiveness. He carried the weight of a people's pain and turned it into purpose. He endured 27 years behind bars, yet walked out with his heart unchained. Where vengeance could have spoken, he chose peace. Where bitterness could have built walls, he built bridges. His life was not just history, it was humanity in motion. His name, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Nelson Mandela, born on May 10, 1994, and laid to rest on June 14, 1999, July 1952. The prisoner who became a president. The peacemaker who turned pain into a pathway for nations. In the face of tyranny, Mandela stood unbroken. Arrested under the Suppression of Communism Act, he was tried in Johannesburg alongside 20 others, branded guilty of statutory communism, a phrase the apartheid government used to silence all opposition. The prosecution sought his death. The judge chose life, sentencing Mandela to life imprisonment instead of the gallows. He would serve 27 years behind bars, his time divided between Robben Island, Pollsmoor Prison, and Victor Verster Prison. But prison could not silence his purpose. As global outrage rose and civil unrest deepened, pressure mounted on South Africa's rulers. Finally, in 1990, the gates opened. Mandela walked free, not with bitterness, but with balance. In 1994, the people he once fought for with words and chose him as their president, turning the page from oppression to possibility. His story became the world's lesson that freedom, once found, must be shared. Out of the chaos of injustice, a mind sharpened itself into a weapon. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a thinker, a student of struggle, a scientist of survival. Where others saw despair, he saw design. He studied the laws, learned the system, and then stood before it, unafraid. Let's go back to America for a minute, where alongside his brothers in a movement, he built more than defense, he built dignity. He called for community control, self-education, protection of the people, and love, not submission, as the foundation of revolution. To those in power, he was dangerous. To those without power, he was direction. His name, Huey Percy Newton, the mind behind the movement, the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, who taught that liberation begins not with hatred, but with knowledge and the courage to defend it. Born February 17, 1942, in Monroe, Louisiana, Huey Newton would grow into one of the most brilliant and misunderstood figures of the 20th century. After witnessing the assassination of Malcolm X, Newton, alongside Bobby Seale and David Hilliard, founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense, a movement that would forever alter the language of resistance. Newton's vision was different from others before him. While many nationalist movements saw all white people as oppressors, the Panthers made a distinction between racists and non-racists, between the oppressor and the ally. Under his leadership, the Panthers became more than a movement. They became a model of empowerment. They launched the Black Panther newspaper, one of the most widely distributed African-American publications in U.S. history. They challenged police brutality head-on, fed children before school, provided free medical care, distributed shoes to the poor, and offered ambulance services where none existed. Their black berets became symbols, not of war, but of watchfulness. Their programs, acts of love, disguised as defiance. Huey Newton was taken from this world on August 22, 1989, but his legacy remains eternal, a reminder that protecting your people is not violence, it is virtue. Before microphones roared and stadium lights burned, there was a man whose fists spoke louder than any anthem. He fought not just for victory, but for visibility. In an era that demanded black men bow their heads, he raised his, smiling, shining, unafraid. Every punch he threw shattered more than bone. It shattered illusion. He fought the world's best, and he fought the world's bias, both in the same ring. They tried to break his spirit through scandal, through exile, through silence. But you cannot imprison confidence. You cannot outlaw pride. His name, John Arthur Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world. The man who redefined power, not as aggression, but as audacity. Arthur Johnson, also known as the Galveston Giant, was born on March 31st, 1878, in Galveston, Texas. At the height of the Jim Crow era, when America tried to cage black ambition, Jack Johnson broke through, becoming the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champion from 1908 to 1915. He fought not just for belts, but for dignity, and every victory felt like a blow against the system itself. His 1910 bout against James J. Jeffries was declared the fight of the century. Jeffries, a former undefeated heavyweight champion, came out of retirement for one reason: to prove that a white man is better than a Negro. He hadn't fought in 6 years and had to lose over 100 pounds to step into the ring again. But by the 15th round, the truth could no longer be denied. Jeffries was knocked down twice for the first time in his career before his corner threw in the towel to spare him the humiliation of a knockout. Johnson later said he knew the fight was over in the 4th round when he landed an uppercut and saw the look in Jeffries' eyes. "I knew what that meant," he said. The old ship was sinking. Jeffries later admitted, "I couldn't have beaten Johnson at my best." Jack Johnson reigned until his passing on June 10th, 1946, a man who stood tall when the world demanded he kneel. He was more than a champion. He was a challenge, a living question to a nation's conscience. And then came the poet, the woman whose words could heal what history had broken. Her voice was honey and thunder, her truth both wound and remedy. She spoke for those who had been silenced, for the bruised, the beautiful, the unseen. Her pen became a pulpit, her story scripture for the soul. She did not whisper her worth, she declared it. And in doing so, she taught the world how to rise again and again. Her name, Maya Angelou, the caged bird who sang, not because she was free, but because she believed she would be. The poet who turned survival into a symphony and gave voice to generations yet unborn. Maya Angelou, born Marguerite Annie Johnson on April 4th, 1928, and laid to rest on May 28th, 2014. Maya Angelou is one of America's most celebrated poets and storytellers. She was active in the fields of theater, acting, writing, and the civil rights movement, lending both her art and her voice to the ongoing struggle for justice and equality. Dr. Angelou received over 50 honorary degrees and more than 10 major awards, honoring her boundless creativity and her lifelong commitment to truth. Her words continue to echo through generations, a testament to courage, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. The pages end here, but the story does not. These names, these voices, these echoes of courage, they are not memories. They are mirrors. For every ancestor who marched, taught, fought, and built, there stand another you. The torch has been passed, not in ceremony, but in struggle, in song, in survival. The Black Book is not a monument. It is a movement. It breathes when you speak truth. It rises when you create. It lives when you refuse to break. From chains to change, from silence to symphony, our story moves forward. So close the book, but never close your heart. For we are the rhythm and the reason, the builders and the believers, the authors of tomorrow. The Black Book is not the end. It is the beginning of this knowledge. Now go forward and further than anyone has ever gone before.